Welcome in the latest episode of the Five on the Floor podcast on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Make sure to check out 5reasonsports.com. Spell it out, F-I-V-E, reasonsports.com. All of our podcasts, 5 on the Floor, but also 3 yards per carry on the Dolphins and NFL, 5 Rings Canes, Ballscast, Light Skinned Opinion, Shulable podcast, and more. Also, check out our merchandise on the site. Entire month of May, 10% off if you spend 30 or more. So 10% off. Yes, there are delays. No, the delays are not as long as the NBA and NFL shops. So go to our store, check out everything there, our Heat stuff, our Tua stuff, and our 5 Reasons stuff. And also our YouTube channel. We've got a couple of new YouTube shows. Some of you have been following 5 Reasons to Drink. I apologize for that. But also the Friends of 5 program with Ryan and Matthew. That is now on there too, and they're interviewing writers from around the country. I want to tell you about one of the great sponsors of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. We've got a bunch of new sponsors. We obviously appreciate everybody who's helped us through COVID. We want you to support them, and these are all South Florida-based sponsors. They're all South Florida sports fans. That's how they found us. And one of them is You Break It, We'll Fix It. That's W-H-E-L-E, W-H-E-E-L, Fix It. It's You Break It, We'll Fix It, Wheel Repair and Remanufacturing Company. You're looking for powder coating for custom color changes on your wheels. You're tired of your wheels. You want to give your car a new and refreshed look by powder coating them a new color. Your wheels faded and scratched. Renew them with in-house wheel refinishing. You can also get your wheels just about any color you want. So you can do heat colors, hurricane colors, dolphin colors, just about anything. You can repair damaged wheels that are curbed, bent, or cracked. They're based in North Miami with 15 years of experience. They're right off Northeast 146th Street. The phone number, 305-748-0112. That's 305-748-0112. And again, the website is youbreakitwheelfixit.com, or go to Instagram at youbreakitwheelfixit, and they've got a special. Use the code 5 Reasons Wheels. That's 5 Reasons Wheels. You'll get 10% off on a 4-wheel repair or refinishing with that code. It's 5 Reasons Wheels. You break it, we'll fix it. And now, today's episode. All right, Ethan Skolnick back on the 5 on the Floor podcast. Make sure to check out all our pods from the previous week, including...
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a Miami Heat and NBA podcast from Ethan Skolnick with Alphonse Sidney, a.k.a. Alf954. Brought to you by the 5 Reasons Sports Network.
Alex Toledo and I spent about an hour with Keith Askins, so check that out as part of our Heat Stories series. We've also done a bunch of stuff on the ESPN Top 74, trying to get you through this, but there's actual news tonight. Like, this was not the plan tonight, but there is actual news. I'm here with Alex Toledo. No Alf tonight. He was getting a haircut in the garage. Did you see that, Alex? He actually posted on
No, but I've been there before.
He got someone to take him. I got someone to take me up in Boca before Broward opened. I went as basically as far south as I could go, Palmetto Park Road.
I've been going to my barber's house over there in his backyard. It's been tough.
Yeah, but with you, look, you're still early 20s. Like, your hair doesn't grow in ridiculous directions like mine does at this stage. I cannot go 3 weeks without a haircut. It's not that I have too much hair. It's just that I have hair in some places and not in others. So I needed the haircut. So I found someone to give it to me last week. I feel better. But check out Alf's haircut. Of course, check out his other podcast, Light Skinned Opinions. But tonight, we're going to be joined by a guy who has been out front on this story. In fact, Alex, myself, and Alf were talking about his story about a month ago on Yahoo Sports. He's Keith Smith. You can follow him on Twitter at Keith Smith NBA. Keith, we appreciate you joining us tonight.
Absolutely, guys. Thanks for having me. Before we get into that, I need more details when we're off air about this haircut stuff, because mine is starting to look pretty wild and out of control. Inside baseball, I asked Ethan if you guys did audio or video, because if you did video, I needed to put a hat on this head because it is looking a little crazy.
If you've seen any of us, you understand why we don't do video. So that's why when you told me that, I was like, no, Zoom audio. That's all we're doing. We can't even handle the technical stuff on the audio side. We're not going to do it on the video side. We do
Radio
appreciate
face, right?
radio face. That's right.
Yep.
That's why I hosted Afternoon Drive. I had a face for radio, as long as that lasted. Anyway, so we want to talk about your story because we've been waiting for kind of like a break. Like I feel like with the NBA, it's sort of like been like a running back behind the line of scrimmage who's kind of pinballing around and like Barry Sanders, and all of a sudden, boom, there's a hole. And we've been waiting for that. And I've gone back and forth on this, Keith, just from the sources I've talked to, where depending on the day over the past 2 months, whether I talk to somebody inside the Heat or talk to one of the players' agents or talk to a player or talk to a media person, I've been all over the place because I've talked to agents who basically told me that they've told their players, we're not playing this year. Don't even worry about it. We're trying to save next season. And then I talked to people inside the Heat organization who are acting like they're playing in a month. And so it's been all over and I haven't been able to follow it. But you wrote a story, a little bit of backstory here. You did work for Disney for a long time. You wrote a story for Yahoo about a month ago. Is that right?
Yeah, it was April 16th that it published.
Okay, so April 16th, you wrote a story, and we all talked about it on the air, but tell everybody what that story said, because that all sort of came to pass today.
Sure, yeah. The basis of the story was why Walt Disney World is the best site to host the NBA if they go to a single site idea. And I kind of put down a bunch of the reasons why. That was the case. I went through those, tried to detail it without getting into super detail, but tried to get into these are the reasons that make sense for Disney to be the place that hosts this compared to a lot of the other options that were being thrown out there at the time.
And Alex, when we discussed this, Alf kind of chimed in, and one of the reasons we thought it was a good option, and this was mentioned today, is that it's secure and it's private. Which is different than what we were looking at in Las Vegas, where it's neither of those two things. But Keith, I guess your background here, when you were writing this piece a month ago, was this a suggestion you were making, or was it based on inside information, or was it a little bit of both?
It was a little bit of both. It was more of a suggestion than any kind of inside information. Let me kind of give you the process that I went through. So when the league shut down, I think we were all in the same place of, all right, this is a couple weeks and then we'll be back at this. No big deal. When it became clear this was not going to be a couple weeks, this was going to be a while, people started throwing out, well, we should have islands, send everybody to an island and we'll play there, or you'll bring in cruise ships and things. I was like, what are we doing? None of this is, even reasonable. And then I started to hear a lot about, well, Las Vegas, the hotels are empty, put them all in the hotels, and you can then use the facilities that they use for Summer League over at UNLV, and off you go. And that'll be what we'll do. And the more I started thinking about it, I've been to Summer League several years running, and I was really thinking about, Las Vegas is a real city. People live there. People work there. You can't just shut it down. You can't say, can't go here, can't go there. I mean, those are public right-of-ways and all of those things that are just going to cause all sorts of problems. So I started kind of noodling the idea of, Disney makes a lot of sense. I talked to my editor over at Yahoo, who fortunately is very familiar with Disney as well. And we, kind of went back and forth, and he said, all right, start writing it up. At that point, I did reach out to some folks with Disney to say, what do you guys think? And I also needed to fact check a few things because it had been a little bit since I had been at the sports complex, where it would be the kind of hub for the basketball portion of this. So I went through, fact checked a couple. I checked it by a couple people in the NBA just to say, is this completely Looney Tunes idea here? That's not Disney, that's Warner Brothers, but whatever. But is this idea completely crazy? And the feedback I got was, no, and we're listening to everything right now. And then immediately it was get to writing, and it went up the next morning, and off we went.
Keith, I have a question. So it seems like today it came out that they're kind of aiming their sights for July 1st. Why are they? First of all, we've been talking about this for a while now, but I never really understood the point of trying to set a date. Like it feels like they've been trying to do this for a while, and it's like everything feels so up in the air that it felt kind of useless to me. I think there's probably other factors that I'm not considering that maybe you would understand here as to why they're not hurrying this up, but what is the point of trying to set a date? Why are they focusing on that so much?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things working from both ends of the calendar there. Let's start with the far end. Everything I've been told by everybody is, even though Adam Silver is not saying it directly, is that they want to be done right around Labor Day. They just don't want to run too much into the NFL season, and they're not going to come out and say that. But I've heard that, over and over and over again from folks in the league and folks with the NBA itself, not teams, but the league office of, that's kind of out there. If we have to, we'll go past it, but that's kind of an end date. So you start to back up from there. The other piece on the front end of the timeline was, I think they really had to wait to get a sense of getting enough players and teams back in their facilities to see what kind of shape are these guys in. Are these guys, do they need 4 to 6 weeks to get ready? Do they need 2 to 4 weeks to get ready? And it seems like now, with, I believe we're up to 19 teams back in their facilities and practicing, it sounds like the attendance for those voluntary workouts has been really, really good. And it sounds like those guys are looking like they're in better shape than what was expected, and they might not need as much time. So I think that allows you to start to really build out that calendar of, okay, so we're going to need this much time for a training camp. We're going to need this much time to get everybody to a single site. And then we're going to need to build out the schedule however we do it, whether it's regular season and then the playoffs, or straight to the playoffs, or some, weird, wacky combination in between there, or whatever it looks like. I think that's where you start to build out that timeline of, we're looking, sometime. What I was told was in between July 4th, in the middle of July, is really tip off for the season to start back up again. And then really still targeting to complete sometime right around Labor Day.
All right, I want to get more into the logistics with you on that in a second. But before we do this, I want to get more into the factors on why they feel they need to return, because that's the big thing here. I mean, a lot of people are just saying, just scrap it, right? Just scrap it. And I keep explaining that is probably the smart thing to do. Although I know that Adam Silver has this sort of altruistic mission of wanting to be one of the things that opens back up because they shut down, and he wants to bring entertainment. And I'm a big Silver fan, and I kind of understand where he's coming from. But with that being said, the big driver on this, from what I've heard, is TV. It's TV money.
Of course.
Right. And so, my understanding, and tell me if these numbers are somewhat similar to what you heard, is that you're looking at almost $1 billion of loss revenue from not having the playoffs. That roughly 20 to 25% of all NBA revenue comes from the playoffs. Additionally, that the TV deals, and I have some friends who are pretty high up in the TV world, the way the TV deals work, they have to get to 70 games somehow, or figure out some accommodation. You've got all of these, you're already dealing with all, the cutting the cord society where, ESPN, which is a major partner, which I know we're going to get into because that is Disney, needs the games, to satisfy their commitments. And so all of this plays together. So how much of this, in your view, and then I wanted to get to the logistics of the site, how much of this, in your view, is altruism? We want to be back. We want to entertain people. And how much of it is just money? That's where they're at right now.
I'd say it's somewhere between 99 and 100% driven by money. I mean, that's just the reality of the way the world works. Everything is driven by money. Is any different? I talked to a bunch of different players all over the map on the pay scale, and the guys who are at the bottom of the pay scale, one of the guys I talked to said, this might be my only year in the league, and I'm not making millions. I want every penny I can get out of this, because I might be out of the NBA next year. There's no guarantee I'm going to be here. And then I think one of the cool things about the NBA now is, look at a guy like LeBron James, who has continually said, I'm not going to do less than max contracts because it's not fair. Because if I start doing it, then the owners would say, well, LeBron did it. Why shouldn't everybody else do it too? And I think that is a trickle down carrying effect for everybody to say, hey, those of us at the top of the league have to try to lift everyone with us. And I think that really is a real thing. Now, I'm being obviously facetious and sarcastic when I say between 99 and 100%. I think that is the primary motivating factor. But I do know for a lot of the players and, several of these teams, there's no warriors this year. There's no inevitable champion kind of looming over everyone. Mm-hmm. And a lot of these players and teams felt like, we can win this thing. And they want to try to get at that to really push forward and try to win that championship. So that is definitely a part of it. I just think, all things being equal, money is always going to win out in the end.
Okay, so another question I've had, you just mentioned that you've spoken with different players from different pay scales. And something that I thought about, and I feel like I've seen kind of mumbled on Twitter, is that not all the players are going to want to come back and play, which feels like, I think right now the consensus is that everybody, the owners, the coaches, the players all want to come back because of the money, because of wanting to win the championship, for all these different reasons. But what about the argument that the players on teams that are not really in the playoff race, maybe players from teams who just don't really have anything to play for, have you heard any of that type of dissenting opinion of, no, we don't want to rush it back?
Yeah, not too much. I've heard a handful say like, well, does it make sense to bring us back? Does it, we're so far out of it. I mean, Steve Kerr openly said, I don't even know if we should be a part of this. We're treating the season like it's over. But the vast majority of the players I've talked to have been a little more on the side of like, I want to get back to some level of normalcy. I want, I'm paid to play basketball. I want to play basketball and I want to do that. And again, even those guys are, hey, if we all play, we all hit those 70 game markers, like Ethan mentioned, which are, that's a huge, benchmark for the NBA is if you can hit that, we all do better then. And that makes more sense for all of us. And that's something that is important for those guys. And it's also funny, when you just talk about, are there players who don't want to come back and play? There are definitely players, I'm sure. I have not talked to any who have said, I don't want to come back. I just think this is wrong. I have talked to many who have said, well, if it's safe, if it makes sense, all those kind of things. And that's, I think kind of clear in everybody's mind. But I've also talked, when people say, well, now you're talking about taking them away from their families, for months at a time. Well, I've talked to at least a couple players, who are feeling the same way. One put it very succinctly. I've been with my family now for a couple months. I'm ready to get back to work.
I talked to two players who told me the same thing.
Yeah, man. I have a 10-year-old who's pretty self-sufficient, but this homeschooling and stuff, it's, I have an education degree. I didn't become a teacher for a reason. And I don't really enjoy being one now. So I was there with that player who told me, I'm ready to get back to work. So yeah, I think when you hear these things of, they all want to play, I'm sure it's not exactly all, but I'm pretty sure it's, well north of 80-90% want to get back out on the floor.
Yeah, we're here with Keith Smith. The other thing to consider is school's out soon. I mean, my daughter's done next week, or 2 weeks with all of her homeschooling. And then the kids have nothing to do. And so if again, I love my daughter, but I know some who have 3 of the house, 3 or 4 of the house, and they're not used to it because NBA players, they're not used to being around their kids that much, to be honest. And let's be honest, they're not used to being around their wives that much. Okay. I mean, there's going to be a line to the divorce court after this is over with. And so, because they're just meeting their spouses for the first time. And let's also be honest, a lot of these players like to get on the road for a variety of reasons. And they haven't been able to do that either. So there's probably pressures that are involved there too. We won't get deeper into that. But with all of that stuff going on, I can imagine they want to play. I guess the question again is, I understand the 70 game thing. I've talked about that a lot, but like if you're the Chicago Bulls, like you already hate your coach. Do you really want to come back to play 6 games to tune somebody else up? They'll do it. I'm sure they may not be happy about it. But let's get to the logistics of this. And the site and what Alf was talking about, which is that if you've been to Wide World of Sports, and I have, I hadn't been there in years until I went back 2 years ago, and it was different than I remembered. I remember there being, maybe I remembered it wrong, but I actually went there with my daughter because I thought there was going to be a lot for us to do, and there really wasn't, because it's really more of a complex for teams, for AAU teams, for high school teams around the country, for different events like that. But talk about the layout of it, because if you've been out in that area, there are a ton of hotels. I mean, I've stayed at all of them, the Sports Hotel, Art of Animation, they're all over there somewhere. You actually reported something today about Coronado Springs, which is like the nicest of them. Now, what did you say? It's blacked out now, right now, basically for that time period?
If you go on the Walt Disney World site right now, you can basically book anything. The latest reservation they're allowing to be booked right now across the property is starting on July 9th. I think the latest date you can go through is July 23rd. And if you put in July 9th to the 23rd, at just about any hotel, you're going to come up with some availability, which totally makes sense, right? The place has been shut down for months, and they're going to have that availability. facility, except for Coronado Springs, which has very few rooms and room types available, which is a little odd. And then you start to put it together when you know the property the way I do. Well, Coronado Springs is a pretty straight shot to the sports complex. You get there fairly easily without much challenge. And the Coronado Springs is Disney's primary convention hotel. It has over 220,000, that was tough for me to say, square feet of convention space that can be configured into any number of things. You could configure that into workout facilities, into meeting rooms, into film rooms, or whatever you need it to be for the NBA. They're not going to have convention activity. They don't have that in the summer very much anyway, and they're not going to have that in the early fall if everything stays true to where we're expecting to reopen here. It also has a very nice section now, which is a tower that was built where you could put the more high profile folks who need to stay in the nicer, and then the rest was completely refurbished. Again, it's convention business. They're trying to drive to upscale conventions. Has a health club, has a spa, has its own pool, has a lake and a marina that you can play and rent boats and drive around this little lake that's completely self-contained within the resort and all that. So there's a lot of things going for it. And what triggered for me is Adam Silver kept saying it'd be campus style. Well, Coronado Springs exact format, how it is explained, is it is a campus style resort with several buildings that are laid out campus style. So that one starts to make a lot of sense. Did you want to get into the sports complex?
Let's get into that too. But the hotel stuff is interesting to me because again, you need to have that kind of facility. And you talked earlier about being away from families. Okay, I talked to one agent of a prominent player who told me, he says, what people are not, this was about 3 weeks ago. This right after your article came out, actually, because we discussed it. And one of the things that he said, listen, one of the issues is that everybody thinks that like it's the player and maybe a couple people. He's like, but the star players, they got entourages. It's not just one or two person. And it's not like entourage, like, okay, like Entourage on HBO. It's people that they need, right? It's their, it's Mike Mancias travels with LeBron, right? And then he's got his own, okay? And, on the Heat, Jimmy has some who travel with him, and there are others on other teams. And so it's not just a nuclear family. It's not just, the wife and the kid and that's it. There's others who are coming. I wonder, before we get to the facility, like, how do you expect all of these people to be invited to? And then, for some of these, even you're talking about a training camp, even if you play a few games, then go to a 2 out of 3 format for 3 rounds, which is something I heard from some people, and then you go 4 to 7 in the finals, you're still looking at 6 weeks. You're still looking at 8 weeks. You're looking at, potentially Giannis and LeBron with their entourages, in Disney for 2 months. How does that work?
Yeah, one of the things that I was told pretty early on was players aren't going to want to do this if they're going to have to be completely separated from their families, which kind of goes back to that, joking comment that the player made, half joking of like, I'm ready for a break. I'm ready to get back to work. But then it came out of, no, we would look at, allowing them to bring family with them. And you're absolutely right. We've all been at games where, some of these guys roll, 20, 30 deep into a game. And it's like, well, what? Like, and these are road games sometimes. So it's like, where are all these people coming from? And it's, it's very, just kind of interesting to think through that part. But one of the things I was told was, it would be limited. You wouldn't be able to bring everybody. You're not going to be able to bring your personal barber plus his cousin. Maybe it's only your personal barber who comes, with you. I mean, I'm, maybe making that up a little bit there, but
not with some guys.
Those are the things. No, definitely not with some guys. Your stylist, your, the guy who just holds your phone for you, and those kind of things. And, your second and third assistant. A lot of times it feels like it's a movie set, with these guys and some of the titles that they have. But it sounds like they're open to, hey, some of these people can come. And the cool thing with Disney, whether it's everyone's at the Coronado Springs Resort or they took over a couple different hotels or whatever, Disney has, there's 34 hotels on property, 28 which are owned and operated by Disney. There's well over 20,000 available hotel rooms. They can do this with I like to say relative ease, because none of this is easy. Let's, put that on the table. But I like to say relative ease because I think it makes a lot of sense. there that Disney can do that and say, okay, so, you're LeBron James, you need 7 rooms. All right, well then, here's 7 rooms. If that's what it takes to make this work, we're going to make that work. But I think it would be more like, all right, we can't give you 7 rooms, or some of your guys are going to have to double up, or whatever the case may be. But they're figuring that out. And I was told today that Disney has started the process of, or what would it look like, for NBA players in rooms? Because let's face it, a lot of these guys are, 6'10" to 7'5". They don't fit in a normal size hotel room. Now that happens when they're on the road anyway.
But but on the road, but it's a little different at the Four Seasons or the Marriott.
Yes.
Even the Marriott, okay, or certainly the Westin or any of those properties than it is
and
at
way more rooms to accommodate.
Yeah, way more rooms than it is at the sports resort. I mean, I've stayed at the sports resort, and it's basically a low-end Holiday Inn. You are, once you get inside, it hasn't been renovated in forever. It's small. The showers are small. I mean, I've stayed at all of these. I mean, I'm probably going to go book my room at Marriott World right now just to be safe. But they're going to, it's not going to be comfortable. And to me, it's the most comfortable of all the solutions, okay, in my view. But it's not going to be comfortable. And what's going to be interesting for me is everybody, whether it's fans, players, the league, is going to have to accept a certain amount of discomfort. And even the fans, the not being able to be there, but also the asterisks are going to be put down next to certain things. There is going to have to be a certain amount of that. So, but yeah, I mean, I was, that's one of the first things I thought of. I wasn't comfortable at the sports resort the last time I stayed there. I can't imagine Giannis is going to be, but it is.
Yeah, they're not going to be there. And even if they are, those aren't going to be the rooms, you and I are used to seeing there. They're going to do something a little bit different to them. But that's not, from what I've been told, that's not one of it's more about proximity to the sports complex to try to keep the bubble small, while also fulfilling, this is what the NBA would need to house all these people here. So I think that is definitely where they're focused on the hotel side is, let's get these guys in some place that's nice. Coronado Springs, like you said, completely redone over the last couple of years, all the way the older section completely refurbished, and then this brand new tower that just opened last year, it hasn't even been open for a full year yet, is all absolutely top of the line, beautiful, and it's to attract high scale convention business, and we all know that's the people who go to those, that's big money in that. So that's, really, really important. So yeah, I think they're going to make it work to figure that out. And I'm not, saying it's definitely Coronado Springs. It just caught my eye that, that's interesting that, completely out of inventory. And that's a little weird when everything else is wide open.
Keith, I have another question. So you mentioned it not being easy this time around and, none of it being easy. I think the next not easy part that we got to talk about here is the fans. So, it's been kind of talked about as if there's not going to be any fans at all. Somehow I was thinking about it. I was kind of doing some thought exercises, and I wouldn't be surprised just kind of, going through it if the NBA were to try to squeeze in some fans, maybe at a very small, 25% capacity, and try to get creative with it, where they get fans sitting away from each other, maybe skip rows, skip seats, all types of things to squeeze as much money as they can and just try to get as much of a playoff atmosphere as you possibly can under the circumstances. Have you heard anything about those logistics and how they would try to figure that out?
Yeah, I've been told 100% there will be no fans.
Wow.
There's no way to control it because you're not going to quarantine the fans with the players. And I know there's been a lot of people saying it's not a real quarantine, it's not a real bubble in that, but they want it as close as it can be. And I was told there will be no fans. It won't be like that. It'll be like the old Orlando Summer League, which was just teams and team personnel. And then, some media and some scouts there. And I was even told by somebody, media may be pretty limited.
I was going to ask, selfishly, I was going to ask you that because I've been poking around
I hear you
around that too. And, again, depending on you mentioned Orlando Summer League. One of the reasons we liked Orlando Summer League, or I liked it when it was in the small gym or at the practice facility, when it wasn't in the arena, was because the proximity you had to the scouts, to the it's terrific. To the players, in my view, better than Vegas. You got to know the guys more.
Yep.
Everybody then stayed at the Marriott property down the street, and you'd be sitting there in the bar, and there walks in Spoelstra for a drink and Patrick Ewing for a drink, and it was a great environment for me. I was very upset when they closed it down. Okay, I know people used to mock it compared to Vegas. Of course you're there for sure.
Yep.
But I am curious about the media thing because, I feel like the Heat, at least, and I feel like the league have been very media responsive during all of this. They have, and the Heat have done a ton of stuff to engage sort of their core beat writer group to make sure that we have sort of what we need and that their player availability and everything. Like, they're not acting like we're done for the year. Like, they're acting like they need us. I'm curious, again, somewhat selfishly, how the league balances that, because if you're going to exclude all media, well, you probably just let the rights holders, so you just let ESPN in. And especially if it's on a Disney property. Again, we're all going to have to accept a certain amount of discomfort. Selfishly, that would kind of piss me off. But so I'm trying to figure out what you think they would actually do with that.
Yeah, so I've been told a number of different things, and I think it really is dependent on who you talk to and what day there is. I talked to somebody 2 weeks ago. It was like, doesn't matter, we're not coming back, so just forget it. And the question was simply like, hey, if this does happen, do you think that we need it at the single site? And the answer I literally got back was, where it's done, the season's over, it's not happening. And here we are 2 weeks later, and it's like, yay, let's go. This thing's, off we go. So I think it's just kind of dependent where you go with that. But one of the things I was told is even the broadcast crews, there's talk of, do you call the games from a remote location like they do, for a lot of the international events and the likes there. ESPN has a pretty extensive experience doing that. That's how they do a lot of the streaming games that are on like ESPN Plus and ESPN3. A lot of times those broadcast crews, they're not actually in the arena or stadium or wherever it is that the game's being played. So I've heard that. I've heard they're going to rely a lot more on the team in-house media, which that's a little. To me, I get it. I get why you would do that. There are already, NBA employees who work for the NBA. There's, you're not assuming a lot of extra liability there. But their motivations for telling a story are sometimes a little different than us who are
well, they're a lot different, and I respect all those people a lot, but they're not in a position to be objective. I think one of the things that they may try to do to maintain some objectivity is put media on Zoom conference calls. I almost don't want to suggest it publicly because I feel like that's what they're going to tell us, right? But
I think that's exactly what's going to happen.
I think it's going to be in-house media, ESPN, and then it's going to be, hey guys, you saw us play last night. We're gonna have we're gonna have Bam Adebayo on a call at 11 o'clock, and we've already seen this locally where like the Dolphins, have put on their draft picks and they had Tua and et cetera. Teams are already doing this. And that is one of my concerns going forward, again, selfishly, because once things are taken away, they don't come back.
Yeah, that was the whole, for me, sorry to interrupt you, but when it was, workloads in the locker room.
Yes.
I got it as an interim step, right? Yeah. Like I totally got that. That made sense again when it looked like, we're only shutting down here for a couple of weeks and this is what it's going to look like and that. But I think the average person, it's funny. I have a lot of, you'll get people who will scream and yell at you of like, you shouldn't be in there anyway. That's their space and blah, blah, blah. But then on the flip side, they are all like, hey, what are they really saying? Well, they're not really saying it in a scrum or up at a podium and those kind of things. Like that's all a lot more coached. It's a lot more sterile. It's, a lot more just it's impersonal where, where you really develop those relationships or when you're, in there just chit-chatting with a guy or you're at shoot around or practice and you grab somebody for, 5-10 minutes and just, you just kind of catch up. And for me being in Orlando, I see a lot of the teams, when they come through on the road and that's how I'm, catching up with people. So I'm with you on that. But I do think that could be it. Hey, you watch the game on TV. Here's the 3 people we're making available, for the post-game press conference, and it's via Zoom or even a conference call or whatever it is, and and that's just going to be how we do it. And it wouldn't surprise me though if they say all right, well we're gonna allow media in, but you got to be checked, and you're gonna have to be part of the bubble and stay in. And
well, I hope that's what I hope, and my hope best case scenario is that's what they decide, and they say we're gonna have a limited number of media. We're going to limit it to the people who cover the team regularly or have covered the team a long time, and that's it. And they handle it with those outlets or those people, and it's a small number. But I know what happens then too, because then you have every local TV station, you've got the and this, and then you have bloggers, and then it starts to add up. And so I get it. I know why they would want to contain it, but my concern with all these things, we're going to go to break and do some quick cap stuff with you. But like, my concern with all these things is always that whenever something goes away, it doesn't come back. And my worry is they're going, oh, the Zoom thing is great. We don't even need it. We don't need anybody in the locker room anymore. And all these people who say they don't want us in the locker room are the same people who are giving us 25,000 views on the locker room videos that we're getting right after the game. So
and they're the same ones who want the insider perspective,
the inside scoop of what's going on.
You're not getting in a podium press conference.
Absolutely. All right.
Yep.
We're going to talk about some cap stuff in a second. I want to tell you about one of the great sponsors of the 5 Reasons Sports Network, and that's Christopher's Bakery. We had our friend Courtney Harris on a pod with us recently. He's a big Heat fan. It was great stuff. You can follow him at Nilla Wafer Cakes on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And Christopher's Bakery is named after Courtney's brother, who unfortunately passed away from a seizure at just 11 years old. They partner with Miami Nicholas Children's Hospital and set up a fund where they donate a portion of the sales to epilepsy neuroscience research, since that's where they spent much of his life. But the signature product is a vanilla wafer cake. I've had it with the chocolate chips. It's delicious. It was created over 30 years ago by Courtney's father. They've got several other cake options available as well. They ship all across country. They can even hand deliver here in South Florida once COVID goes away. Hopefully we're getting closer to that. But they can still deliver all over the country. And they've created a website page, Christopher'sBakery.com/5 reasons. Spell it out, FIVE reasons. And the code is also 5 reasons, FIVE reasons. And you'll get 15% off your order. So it's Christopher's Bakery. And the Twitter handle, Facebook, Instagram is at NILLA Wafer Cakes. And now let's get back to the app. All right, so let's get to some rapid fire cap stuff with you here. First thing, what do you think we're looking at? Because Keith's an expert in this area too. What do you think we're looking at in terms of a decline in the cap over the next couple of years?
Yeah, I think what you're going to see is some form of special bargaining done between now and next year. As Adam Silver said, the CBA was not built to assume a loss of billions of dollars. It just wasn't set up that way. No one anticipated this, and you better believe they'll anticipate it going forward. But I think you're going to see them do some form of special bargaining where, rather than just simply let the BRI formula take in the BRI basketball related income, bring that in and then figure out the split and drive the cap off that, which quite frankly, that could drive a cap down as low as $90 million we're hearing. It could be your cap is $109 million roughly right now. We're hearing 20 to 30 million drop. So if that happens, now, what does that really look like? And that's a mess. That's a mess for all sorts of people in the league, and teams would be, tax teams and guys who are free agents. All of a sudden their max contracts are, really not, very good comparatively to what they would have been. So I think you're going to see some form of special bargaining, which puts a bottom on how low the cap can drop. So that way they kind of protect for everybody. It's a form of cap smoothing, but this time, rather than slowly phase in, raises versus the big cap spike, they're trying to avoid a big cap valley, which then only causes problems when in, let's say, a couple years, things seem like they're back to normal and things are flowing the way they should. They don't want to then have another, $15 million cap spike, because that created a lot of issues around the league and a lot of problems for a lot of teams and players and the like. I've heard, some teams have suggested that the idea of an amnesty clause has been pitched, bring back a one-time amnesty, and those kind of things. I've heard, things as like, we'll protect player salaries, but eliminate the luxury tax, if this is where the cap drops to, and those kind of things. And it's interesting. I do have to wonder if this was like it was last summer with a, all-time historically great free agent class, if there'd be a different feeling versus this year, which is really a pretty terrible free agent class. If, some folks might feel a little bit different, but I think you're going to see them really do some things where they lock into a number, because the good news in all this is the NBA and the NBA Players Association have a really good relationship. Compared to something like Major League Baseball, where it looks like they're actively doing everything they can to not play, maybe ever again, the way they're all acting. They're really trying to work together to make this thing happen, get this season back on board, and then make sure everybody's taken care of long term. And I think that's something that's really important.
So the smoothing thing, that's kind of what's been on my mind. It feels like that's going to be something that ends up happening to whatever degree. I don't know. It it feels like out of the question where, you know, all of a sudden, if you cut the cap by like 27 million and all of a sudden teams are gutting their teams and 27 teams are in luxury tax. Somehow I don't think that scenario ends up happening. The idea that you pitched just now of taking away the luxury tax is kind of interesting. I kind of like that just for like a one-time thing. But the smoothing, that's been the one that stuck to my head. What do you think a possible cap smoothing scenario would look like? And the amnesty thing as well? Because like, could you see somebody like Chris Paul or John Wall or Wiggins maybe getting amnestied? What type of players do you think would get that?
Yeah, I don't think a guy like Chris Paul, I think he's played too well. He's, you know, arguably going to be an all-NBA guy. So I think he's, you know, lived up to that contract. It doesn't look quite like it might have looked a year or two ago.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not worried about that. But yeah, a guy like John Wall, if the Wizards felt like, you know, we're not sure if this guy's going to get back, and, you know, those kind of things, you could see them wipe a contract like that off the books. You could see, you know, a team like the Knicks, who maybe has buyer's remorse on a guy like Julius Randle, you know, let's knock that contract off the books. Those are the kind of things I think you're looking at. The good news is for the NBA right now is there's not this ton of terrible contracts like there, you know, always was for years.
Right.
You know, and that's been always, whenever the amnesty clause has come in, it's been because a very tangible change has been made in the CBA, and they're trying to allow teams to protect. This time around, you're going to have teams that are going to be like, well, wait a minute, we've managed our books pretty well. You know, we don't have any bad contracts. Why are we giving a get out of jail free card to, you know, dummy who signed, you know, player X to a big extension that they never should have signed him to anyway? That's not our fault. You know, why are we going to help them out and put them in a good position?
Well, unless, Keith, they want the player. Like,
Correct.
So, okay,
that's true.
So let's look at it from the Heat's perspective, since that's where we are. So I'm looking at a couple of these names, and I'm I know how Pat's mind works. I mean, what could you still squeeze out of Blake Griffin next to Bam Adebayo? Yep. Right? I mean,
Chris Paul, John Wall, right?
Chris Paul, John Wall. I think all three of those guys, like, literally, he would take them right now and put them on the team.
Yeah, especially you're not on the hook for the, because let's be clear, when the players amnestied, they still get the full amount of their salary. It's just wiped off the books. The team still has to pay that amount to them. So in this case, let's use Blake Griffin. The Pistons are still on the hook for the, you know, $30+ million.
And they just got off Josh Smith, right?
Yeah, like, just came off the. Well, we'll just come off the books for the next season. But yeah, they still have to pay him, but that's no longer charged to the salary cap. So then the Heat say, hey, Blake, you want a minimum contract? Because you're still making $30+ million. Sure, why not?
It doesn't even have to be a minimum for the Heat if the cap doesn't go down too much. Correct. Because the Heat was in the fourth, I believe, with the trades at the deadline, got themselves into the fourth. They probably wish they hadn't signed that Iguodala extension now, but they got themselves into that fourth position among teams against the cap right now. And, you know, again, when I've had conversations with those inside the organization, they basically said, look, we'll see what the cap is and we'll figure it out. Okay. Yep. And that's the way that they operate. But I'm looking at the Blake thing and I'm saying, all right, it's one thing to say you're going to trade 3 pieces for Blake Griffin, but it's another thing saying you can offer him a few $1 million to come down and, you know, evolve into the game that he had evolved into anyway, which, I mean, how do we feel about the fit next to Bam, Alex? It's pretty good, right? I would think. For
Blake? Yeah, I'm with that, especially with not having to pay forward. Oh my God. I mean, that's a like epitome of a Heat redemption Pat Riley project right there.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like all the others, to be honest with you. He's not that old, and if he gets hurt, it's not the end of the world. And
like just past his prime, but would still be good and in the right situation. It fits right into the mold. I don't know. It's
perfect, and you don't have to flip Hero, Nunn, Okpala, or any of the other pieces that you have on the roster. I mean, even look, I agree. Chris Paul's not going anywhere. He's too valuable even at this stage. And like you said, the contract's going to look even more ridiculous, you know, when the cap goes down. But I mean, it's going to be like half of the cap. But still, he's been pretty damn good. John Wall is a more interesting one who we talked about a lot before the season because we were like, would you take him back in a deal with Beal as a negative? But again, if he's not costing you anything, and he's a true point guard, which honestly the Heat do not have right now. I mean, Dragic is the closest thing, but they don't have one on the roster. It's supposed to be Winslow. It's not Nunn. And Jimmy. It's Jimmy and Bam, basically. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that would be really interesting. All right, one more for you, Keith. Sure. And then we'll kind of let you go. The Anthony Davis and Giannis. how are their situations affected by what's happened and whether or not there's a season? Because here's been my theory. You tell me if you welcome on this podcast to tell me I'm wrong. I think Anthony Davis stays in LA no matter what now, especially if they don't have a chance to make the run. And especially because the max he gets somewhere else is not going to be as significant as it would have been. So why would you leave the situation he's in now? But my feeling is that with Giannis, this may push him closer to the door if it's not a legitimate – I mean, they were in position to win a championship, and now there's a bunch of variables that are thrown in. Whether even if you have a season, he's got a lot of old guys on his team. I don't know how they're going to come back from this, like a Corver and some of these guys. Kyle keeps himself in great shape, but they've got older guys. Brooke Lopez, George Hill. They've got – and the bones may creak a little bit. They may not get back into shape quite as quickly. It takes older players longer. What if they don't win this year, and then he's got 1 year to try to win before he's a free agent? How does this affect those two guys in particular?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit different for each guy. If you look at Anthony Davis, he was highly likely to opt out of his player option for next year and become a free agent. And then I think he was staying in LA almost no matter what. I think it would have had to be a spectacular failure in the playoffs where he also got blamed for everything going wrong, for him to leave. I mean, you don't spend a half a year angling to get to a place just to up and leave it. But what he was eligible for with the Lakers was, first year salary. If the cap came in at the $115 million projection, $34.5 million in the first year, total 5 years, $200 million contract. Now, if it drops, who knows? It might not be that. It might be lower. Well, what if it locks in at this year's number, or they go down to, let's say $100 million or something like that? Everything starts to lower down, and that's where all of a sudden he's not eligible for quite as much money. And that's where people start saying, like, well, he'll still opt out. He'll sign a 2+1, and then that puts him on the bronze timeline and all those things. Could that happen? Sure, it could happen. But I look at it as a lot of times with NBA players, they take the most money when they can get it, because they're so very conscious of, I snap my Achilles tomorrow, it's all gone. Then, right. There it is. And that's, just a reality of being a professional athlete. Now, Giannis, a little bit different, right? He's eligible for the so-called Supermax because he's won an MVP. He's got that, locked in. He may win a second one this year, but won't really matter. So he could sign that Supermax. Wouldn't kick in next year. Next year, he's still under contract for, what sounds like a, relative bargain of $27.5 million for him. But it would start with the 2021 season through 2022, and then could run for the 5 years, and that could be a massive contract for him. And that is something that I think you really have to look at with a guy like him. Just is the number going to be there, or does Giannis say, you know what, let's wait this out, let's wait one more year of the contract and see where it goes? Then you have the factor that you mentioned of, this was going to be a big run for them. If they, rampage their way to the title like they were in the regular season, I think Giannis looks at it and says, yeah, it's not going to be any better for me anywhere else. Why would I leave? I won a title. They can give me the most money. I'm staying here in Milwaukee. I always tend to look at it too with Kawhi Leonard. And a lot of people like to say, well, Kawhi didn't. Kawhi's a very different dude. He is completely different than most other NBA superstars. He's just differently motivated. He's a guy that's, really, quite frankly, hard to get a real handle on. But a guy like Giannis, there's two things for me that go into it is, you take the most money when you can get it. We all know how the NBA works. If you're unhappy in a year or two, you start forcing, a trade, and you start, doing all the things that NBA players can do. I'm not saying he would do that, but he could. The other thing that I think about a lot with him as well is he, being a foreign-born player, a lot of times the foreign players tend to stay in a market a lot longer than the American-born players do, because when they come to the United States in that first place, that's home for them. And for Giannis, Milwaukee is home. He really, in a lot of ways, grew up there. I know he grew up in Greece, but as he matured into an adult, it's all been in Milwaukee. That's been the only home he's known in the United States. Dirk Nowitzki talked about it extensively. A big chunk of the reason why he never wanted to leave Dallas was that was the only American home he knew, was Dallas. And I think that does matter. I don't think that can be overlooked with these guys who were foreign born, because it's, something there. I even think about a guy like Goran Dragic, who has really said the two places he's felt, really only felt at home was Phoenix, and that ended kind of poorly for him, and then Miami.
Right.
And I think that's, really important is, those guys, it makes a lot of sense, when you start looking at it from that respect, why those guys aren't as quick to up and leave, because this is home for them. This is, where they want to be.
Parker, Ginobili, Tony until the end when he was forced, but otherwise they didn't leave.
Hakeem Olajuwon, if you want to go way back.
Hakeem. That's true, actually. I mean, that it's sort of an interesting strategy too. If you're a team owner like Cuban, who's gone for Dirk and then for Luka, to bring in guys who you think would associate with the market and not want to leave there. Alex, did you have anything else before we let Keith off the hook here?
No, I think we went through everything.
Yeah, it's great stuff. I mean, follow Keith Smith, NBA. You were out front. I mean, you kind of, I don't know, you're like the secret. Like you sort of willed this into existence. I only hope for this. You know what? If they let one media person in, other than Clutch Sports, I'm sorry, ESPN. If they let one. I know a lot of the people at Clutch, but I mean, it's gotten ridiculous. If they let one person in, it should be Keith. It should be Keith, and you can leave Paul Pierce at home. And that's basically what we'll do. You'll go in for Paul Pierce, who today decided that LeBron was not a top 5 player. Put Kobe ahead of him.
Celtics fan, right? I don't think he likes that comment you're making.
I just Keith, that I'm sorry, that ESPN list was ridiculous.
Or he was a Celtics fan.
Well, you can't be a
fan.
Yeah,
that's the better way to put it. I've lost a lot of the fandom since doing this. I tried to be a little bit more objective, but I did grow up a Celtics fan, and Paul Pierce was my guy. Let's put it that way. I don't agree with everything he has done. I prefer to think of him as Paul Pierce, the Boston Celtic, versus Paul Pierce, the media personality most days.
Well, I think the Heat broke him. I think LeBron and Dwayne broke him. Like he's just, I don't know. He can't get over it. It's amazing. But that ESPN list was total garbage. I'm sorry. Because we talked about it the other day. They got like 72 Celtics on. I mean, Jerry Seasting was in the 71st spot on the all-time greatest players, right behind Scott Wedman. I thought they went way, 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 way too far trying to find white Celtics to add to their list.
I was about to ask if that was true, and then I was like, that cannot be true.
No, it's true. Check out ML Carr. ML Carr is in others receiving votes. Keith, appreciate it. Thanks for the time. Check him out at Keith Smith, NBA. Check out our sponsors again, Christopher'sBakery.com/5 reasons. Make sure you spell it out. Use the code 5 reasons spelled out for 15% off. And of course, our new sponsor, You Break It, We'll Fix It. So check out their site, check out their work on Instagram. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to the 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons of Sports Network.